and love, y'all. Peace and love. Peace and love. Happy Sunday. Y'all come on in the room. I'm trying to wait until I'm streaming on two phones at one time. So if y'all see me looking back and forth, that's really what it's about. So y'all come on in the room. I got a message. It's Sunday. Y'all come on in the room. Peace and love, y'all. Y'all come on in the room. It's Sunday. Y'all ain't doing that. Come on in the room. It's Sunday. Y'all ain't doing nothing, and you need a good word. Come on in the room, because I got a word. I got a message. Hey, y'all. I'm recording on TikTok and Facebook at the same time. So if y'all see me backwards and forwards reading comments, that's what it is. But I'm gonna try not to hold Facebook up too long, because Facebook be taking forever to come in with the viewers. But TikTok, y'all be ready for the message. So I'm gonna go ahead and start, and the people will come in later. But hey TikTok, hey Facebook, peace and love, y'all. How y'all doing on this beautiful Sunday? Y'all, Bay Good got a message. I got a message. I've been in here sleep all day, getting me some rest or whatever, much needed rest. And this video is titled Surviving the Camp. Crescenice, Woodmont. Basically, that's a neighborhood project that I grew up in as a child. And I wanted to go ahead and tell my story. Apparently, I've been holding it in. I've been bottling it up. And that's why I'm up here to share it with y'all today. So, I grew up in this neighborhood project we called it the Camp, which original name was Woodmont, Crescenice, whatever you want to call it, right? And it was basically the hood, okay? Let's be honest. Growing up in the hood wasn't easy for nobody. Hey, y'all. Hey, everybody that's coming in. I'm streaming on two phones, y'all, so I can't I'll read comments and stuff a little bit later. But I'm going to tell this message while it's on my heart, while it's fresh on my heart, because it is definitely needing to be put out there. But I grew up in this neighborhood project called the Camp. Well, we called it the Camp or whatever. And I'm going to be honest, it felt like the camp, a concentration camp, okay? At least that's how I looked at it, right? And so, today, I had a breakthrough. I had a cousin, one of my cousins posted on Facebook, he shared a post how, you had to grow up in the camp, you just had to be there during that era, and basically how he was proud of growing up in the camp. And I got on there and I just straight up was like, not me. I hated it. Everybody else on there like, yeah, me too. People talking about they wish they grew up in it and all this type of stuff. And I jumped dead on there and was like, not me. I hated it. It was a dead end. It was a dead zone. It was zombie land. And, that was just me speaking my truth. And so he jumped on my comment and he said, well, cuz, you just got to look at it as you was like a beautiful rose that grew out of the concrete and, of the hard times. And so when he said that, it would seem like it's nothing when you read it to regular folks who don't give a damn. But to me, I had to think about it because he had helped me change my perspective real quick just by that simple statement. And so when he said that, I had to put my phone down, y'all. And when I say I broke down crying so bad, when I say that's why my eyes puffy right now, because I literally just got through crying. Because God has been telling me lately to change my perspective, the way I look at things, to zoom out and see the bigger picture. And a lot of times we like to look at things so up close to the point that we can't see the bigger picture. And so I had been asking God, like, what are you talking about? You know, and a lot of times you be thinking that you done healed a lot of childhood wounds, a lot of childhood trauma. And we just recently came out of this retrograde. And retrogrades are here to help you, you know, recap. It's like a rewind. It helps you to remember where you came from. It helps you remember the past. It brings back the past, right? And so even though the retrograde just freshly ended, the shadow phase of it is still here. And so a lot of times I'm always telling people, oh, don't go back to the past, don't go back to the past. But sometimes we have to revisit the past in order to be able to, you know, teleport to the future. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't realize how we be keeping ourselves stuck sometimes just by simply holding on to things that we didn't even know we were harboring. And so I can tell myself all day long that I done healed, that I done grew, I done moved on, I done forgave. But I grew up holding a lot of grudges because I had a hard not life, like a real hard not life. And my life's still hard. And I believe it's because of what I'm finna tell y'all right now. You know what I'm saying? And so I thought I grew up. But apparently I still had some areas that I needed to grow in, which we all still do. You know, growing don't ever stop, right? Healing never ends. And so when he made this comment about my past in his childhood, when he was talking about this project, he's like, well, cuz you got to look at it as, you know, look at the beautiful person, the beautiful rose that you became. You know, you grew into coming out of this hard place. You were like a rose growing in concrete. And I can remember years ago, I actually saw a flower growing through my concrete in my neighborhood one time. And I thought that was crazy. And I was like, God, why would you show me that? But here I am years later, and my cousin brought that back to me just in that saying. And so when he said it, y'all, I cried so bad because this neighborhood was the worst place I could ever, it was the worst. I hated this place. I hated being near this place. I even as an adult, I hate still even going near this place because I can remember the hardships. I can remember the hard times. I can remember the heartbreak, right? And nobody wants to keep remembering and rehashing things like that, especially when you're trying to heal. But you got to go through the hard to get through the healing sometimes, right? And so just as well as I've been trying to get my family and relatives and even my mother to go through the hurt to get to the healing, I didn't realize that some parts of myself was avoiding going through the hurt to get to the healing. And so this place was monstrous to me. This place robbed me of my childhood. This place was where I was conceived. To me, unfortunately. Because I grew up, I was conceived through a young mom. My mom was 12 years old, young, and she was introduced to sex, unfortunately, too early. She became promiscuous because promiscuity ran through our family heavily, and it still does. Not to judge and down nobody, but the truth got to be spoken. It is what it is. And this is why I'm always going, I'm abstinent now. This is why I hold myself to myself and keep myself to myself, because promiscuity, the spirit of Jezebel and Delilah just swirls around my bloodline. And I have been deemed as promiscuous in a hoe and all kind of things my whole life just because of the bloodline that I came from. But nobody can prove promiscuity. People can't tell you I was a hoe, but they can say it because of my background or the family I came from, right? So I chose to go and do something different and keep myself to myself so that I could kind of break that chain of everybody in our family being a hoe. You know what I'm saying? But back to my point is, at the end of the day, she was promiscuous at 12 years old. And she got pregnant with me, right? By my biological father, who was 12 also. They were the same age. And they grew up at the time, because I wasn't even born yet, but they grew up in this holiness church, which was really a cult. And I'm pretty sure people probably from that cult watching me and pissed off that I keep calling it a cult, but it is, because it's not a church, it's not of God. And I'll tell you why as I keep going, but at the end of the day, my mother and biological father were both in this neighborhood, right? My biological father stayed in this neighborhood. My mama came to the neighborhood to to a sleepover slumber party at my aunt's house, which was where my daddy lived. And she decided she wanted to get a little bit. She said, this is what she told me years ago, whether she'll admit it or not. But this is what she said out of her mouth. She was like, shit, I was at the slumber party sleepover, and your dad was there, and he was so fine, I had a crush on him, and I just had to get me a little bit. So I snuck up in that room when everybody was asleep, because the boys was in one room and the girl was in another room, but she decided to be a little mischievous, a little rebel, and went in there and got her some. And so she said, she stated, the next day, after she had got her a little bit, right, she ended up seeing another guy that she had a crush on in the neighborhood, the camp, same neighborhood, older guy, a couple years older than her, named Mike, right? So you got Billy, who is my biological father. You got Mike, who is, quote unquote, supposed to not be my biological father. If you stay here and stay tuned, you will see why it's so crazy. I got two daddies, okay? And I claim them both dearly. And so she got her a little bit from Mike the next day. She seen him. She walked down the street. She seen this fine, dark, chocolate, handsome man. And she just had to get her a little bit of that too. So boom. Now, mind you, nobody in the church, because you got Billy's family, who's heavily in the church, which is the Clark family. Then you have the Peoples family, which is my mother's maiden family. We all grew up in this holiness cult, right? Then you have the Barnes family, right? Who, they were Christians as well. And so they all resided in this neighborhood, the camp, Crescent East, okay? Woodmont, as some people like to call it. And she ended up pregnant at 12 years old. She had me at 13. Mind you, she's pregnant while her family is heavily in this church that crucifies sex before marriage. I'm going to say that again. She belonged to a family who was heavily in a church that crucified sex before marriage. So, of course, that explains why she was sneaky with it. Of course, she's young. She has no business having sex, but you got to think about it. This is back in the 80s, right? This was back in like 85. So back then, they didn't mind having a little sex early. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't truly frowned upon unless I guess you was in the church, right? But at the same time, she was crucified and sacrificed because she was pregnant young, right? On top of that, she done got pregnant by a young guy in the same church, right? He 12 years old. You know, she probably didn't even think he even could skeet like that. But apparently he could, because, hey, here I am, looking just like him. And so either way, she's young, she's pregnant, she doesn't know who her child's father is. And because promiscuity run deep in our family, I was everybody's child but the right person child, right? I became his child, that child. So you got two guys that live in the same hood, right? They are both cool, but it's an age difference, right? You got one that's older, that's like 18 years old, and the other one's like 12 to 13 years old. But they cool, but they both done slept with the same girl. And now she's pregnant, and don't nobody know who the child daddy is. So now, at this point, the church done crucified her and them real bad. And then the older guy, of course, you know, he kind of get frowned upon because, hey, he the older one. He wasn't supposed to be sleeping with nobody that young, I guess. But, hey, he did. It is what it is. So, I later found out that not only did that, you know, they didn't know who my father was, I later found out they even tried to throw me off on my grandmother's husband at the time. So now I got this daddy, and my granddaddy who's supposed to be my daddy. I'm everybody's child. Then you got the other guy that she was with that went off to the service, which I call Papa Joe. And he in the chat, hey Papa Joe. At the end of the day, he was off in the service, you know, trying to make a little money, thinking he gonna come back to this young tenderoni and take care of this child that don't even belong to him. But he's willing to take on the responsibility because he knew the consequences. He knew the situation of everything. And I thank God for all my father figures, because even though I didn't biologically, physically grow up with a father in the home, I was blessed with many father figures around. And I thank God for that. And so, at the end of the day, you got all of these men surrounding this little bitty girl and this baby, right? Don't know who her dad is. Nobody wants to get a DNA test back then. I don't know how much DNA tests cost. I'm pretty sure they didn't cost that much. Hell, back then divorces probably didn't cost that much, because people was in the church was getting married just to have sex. They was flopping love lives just to have sex because they didn't want to be deemed as promiscuous. So they would change husbands and shit. So at the end of the day, the cult that we came from, let's be real, was a bunch of hoes. But they crucified a 12-year-old child because she got pregnant early, because they was at revival. Because the whole while she was at this sleepover, the church folks was at the revival. So this is how she was knocking the boots, right? Because they were not supervised. You got young teenagers at the house, preteens, fresh going through puberty, right? Having sex with no adult supervision around. All the adults is so caught up in their church, right? To the point now you don't even know what your kids at home doing. So you left your children at home in the projects by themselves, and now your teenage daughter then got pregnant. So now the church is crucifying my grandmother. She embarrassed because my grandmother been in this church, a dedicated Christian all her life, as long as I can remember. She in this church, and then you got my dad and Billy mama. She over here in the church too. They both go to the same church. They both friends. They both evangelists. They both upcoming speakers or whatever. Because I got preaching in my bloodline. You feel me? That's why I be preaching a lot. I come from a line of preachers and prophets, right? And so at the end of the day, basically they were embarrassed that their two young kids that had sex and they got pregnant. They messed around, had my little big ass, right? Nobody still go get a DNA test. So then you got this person over here, Billy. I don't even think he was really claiming me at the time because he was young and startled, didn't really know what to do. Then you got Mike over here who's older, and he like, fuck it, you mine. Then you got Papa Joe come back from the service, and he like, hell, you mine. Then you got at this time, my mama that got married to somebody else named Mo, Lord rest his soul, and he was my stepfather. So I had several father figures, like, you know what, forget it. At this point, you just ours. And so, as heartbreaking as it was, I wanted my biological father. Regardless of all of these dads that I had, uncles, grandfathers, I wanted my real dad. I wanted to know who my real daddy was, right? But we never got that DNA test. Short story, he ended up passing away with cancer when I turned 12 years old, right? I still had my father, Mike. Before Billy passed, Mike would come and pick me up every weekend as my father figure, like a real father would. He was playing the role as my daddy, biologically. So he would come and pick me up every weekend or every other weekend or whenever he had time. And I would look forward to it. I was all excited and shit, like kids would be, right? So one weekend I was waiting on him. We had these thick screen doors on the camp. And I was waiting on him to come pick me up. And my mama and her friend was sitting on the porch, and she was just talking away, just running them out. And I was back and forth to the door looking for Mike to come and pick me up. And it was after school, Good Friday afternoon, and I overheard as I was sitting in the living room, because this is why you got to be careful what you say, even when you think your children aren't listening, because kids be eavesdropping. They really do. And I was in the living room waiting on him. I kept leaving in and out the living room, just back and forth to the door, because I'm looking for my daddy to come pick me up, right? Because even though I heard of Billy Ray, I really didn't know him well. In my mind, Mike was my father, because that's who had been in my life since I was small enough to recognize. But then I also had Billy family playing a role and coming back and forth and picking me up. So I really didn't know the backstory to who and what. I was just going along with whatever. And then on top of that, you got my sister and them daddy folks who, that's another story for a different day. But anyway, I'm waiting on Mike to come pick me up, and I overhear my mother say, oh, well, she think Mike is her daddy, but Billy Ray really her daddy. And I'm sitting in the living room, and I'm like, what? So my heart literally shatters. Because now in my mind, what the... You mean to tell me the person who I'm thinking is my father is not my father? The guy that I'm currently waiting to come and get me is not my dad. But he thinks he's my dad. But you're going to let him keep thinking that instead of telling him the truth, right? So I thought that was real fucked up. I'm going to be honest. Excuse my French. I'm going to try not to cuss so much. But excuse me if I do, because I got a lot of shit that's on me that needs to be released. So I thought that was real fucked up. Because I was like, why would you do that? You got this man coming to get me, and he thinks that he's my dad, but he's not. So, okay, Billy's my dad. Well, why is Billy not here, is what I'm saying to myself. So I'm like, I got to tell Mike he's not my dad, because my conscience going to eat me up at the fact that this man takes good care of me. He picks me up. He takes me to his family. They welcome me. At least most of them did. And half of them did, half of them didn't. And I didn't understand why until I got older. But, you know, I had to break the news to him because I felt like it was my duty to tell him he wasn't my father. So now I done got to his house, and I finally tell him after, you know, the weekend passed, I'm like, you're not my dad. Like, you're not my father. And I could see his heart literally shatter. And I'm 11, 12 years old, but I could see this man's heart break right before my eyes. But I had to tell him the truth because, hell, my heart was broken at the fact that he wasn't. Because I thought he was my dad. And so he took me home and he told me how he was always going to love me. He was still my daddy. I was still his. It didn't matter. Regardless, he still loved me anyway. And he left, and I didn't see him for a while. So then shortly after that, Billy pops up in my life. Finally, I get a chance to see Billy in person and without restrictions, because I had seen him throughout my life a couple of times. One time was at my grandmother's house for Thanksgiving, and he couldn't say anything to me. He just looked at me because I guess I looked every spit of him and it scared the shit out of him or something. I don't know. But he didn't say anything to me. He just sat on the couch and stared at me. And then another time I was in the camp, walking down the street, just minding my little business. And all of a sudden I hear somebody coming down the road in the car. Psst, psst, hey, shawty. Hey. Ooh, you fine. And I look over. It's the car passing by. And why is my daddy, Billy, passing by, hollering at me? And when he gets in front of me, he look in my eyes and he sees me. His eyes got big as 2 50-cent pieces, like. And I looked at him like, yeah, I'm your child. You feel me? Because at this point I was bitter, I was angry, I was hurt, and I was also feeling abandoned, you know. And the camp was my first place that I was ever abandoned in, right? So to see my biological daddy in a car passing by me, leaning out the window, hooting and hollering at me, was a disgrace to me. For one, I'm already a minor. So I'm pretty sure you could see driving down this road, I'm a minor. My body ain't telling you that I'm an adult. Yeah, I might be switching a little bit because I have a natural switch to my walk. But at the same time, common sense should have told this man this is a child, but apparently not. So when he got in front of me, he looked and he got startled like, oh my God. And I just gave him the look like, yeah, Ninja, if you had been in my life, you would have known your child a mile away. You would have knew it was me as soon as you pulled in this neighborhood, right? So I never forgot his face. You know how you get that still face and you just could never forget it when you see it? And it was a face of shock. And so when he went on down the street, I just shook my head and I went home and I was like, Mom, guess who tried to holler at me? And she's like, who? And I told her, I was like, my dad. And she's like, what? You know. And I just thought that was crazy, but she didn't really say nothing, you know. So I went on, you know, a little while after that, he ended up showing up to my house and apologizing to me. And he was just crying real bad, talking about how sorry he was and this and this and that. And I just told him I always, you know, still loved him and I always forgave him. You know, I never despised him. I never hated him because if it was, you know, wasn't for him and my mama, you know, knocking the boots, it wouldn't be no me, right? And so little did I know shortly after that he would be diagnosed with cancer. So about 3 months later, I found out he was sick with cancer, and he ended up dying. So now I'm without him again. So I don't have my biological father, and I don't have my other father, Mike, because I broke the news to him. And I started, you know, and I used to hear rumors from my mama saying it all the time before my daddy, Billy Ray, passed. Oh, your daddy's a drug addict, he's a crackhead, he's this, he that. And she would just say all kind of messed up stuff about my daddy. So it was as if she was trying to turn me against the man, but I just couldn't be turned against him. And I would hear kids on the bus going to school from the camp. Oh, I got a sperm donor, my sperm donor, da-da-da-da. And I can remember saying to my classmates one day, I don't have a sperm donor. You know, I got a daddy. Even though he ain't in my life, I still got a daddy. You know, I didn't want to look at my father like a sperm donor, right? And so, you know, the kids in the camp was a different breed, baby. They was cruel on another level. You know what I'm saying? And so, not to mention that I dealt with bullying in this neighborhood from the kids, from the neighborhood. I dealt with abandonment. That was the first time I ever experienced abandonment, was from the camp. For one, I experienced abandonment in the womb with my mother, because you got to think about it. She's 12 years old, pregnant, and she's crucified by the church. So, of course, naturally, you would want to abort or get rid of this child, because if I get rid of this child, it could erase everything that happened, right? And I'm pretty sure that's what went through her brain, even though she never said it. Well, until later in my life, she did. But at the same time, she was crucified by the church. My grandmother was crucified and judged by the church. And you got my other grandmother who was crucified, even though she tried to kind of sweep it under the rug and act as if I wasn't there. Mind you, I go to this church with my mama, sitting on the front pew every day of the week, because we went to church like nuns, like Mormons. No offense to any Mormons that's in the chat. But at the same time, we were in church 17 days out of the week. Okay? And I would sit on the front pew with my grandmother, my mama's mama, who was an evangelist. Then you had my other grandmother, Billy's mom, who was the pastor's assistant preacher. And she sat on the pulpit. So now I'm sitting with my grandmother on the front pew, and I can see my other grandmother from the pulpit every day. Every time we went to church, I'm sitting there looking at her, waiting on her to reach out to me and say, hey, come here. You belong to me. You my grandchild. Just welcome me, right? That never really happened. I got a couple of words from her, but it never really happened the way I expected it to happen. My great-grandmother, which was my daddy's mother, she accepted me, though. And my aunt, which was my daddy's sister. But my grandmother, she did, but she didn't. And she might differ, but at the same time, she still don't really accept me for real. And it is what it is. It's a harsh truth that I gotta speak. That's my reality. Confirmation. And so, you know, I'm not making this shit up. I'm not pulling it out of my ass as much as I wish that I was. But it is what it is. And it's gotta be spoken. So, I'm now fatherless, right? Mind you, my mom is young. She has 4 girls by the age of 19. So we are living in the camp at the time, and my mama is like 20 with 4 kids. I am literally robbed of my childhood because I have to raise my sisters, because my mama was so young. She wanted to party. She wanted to live it up. She wanted to do what she wanted to do, and she just made me her permanent babysitter. I went from being her babysitter to her homegirls babysitters, her family, anybody who needed a damn babysitter. I was forced, against my will, to be their fucking built-in babysitter for free. A few might have paid me, but majority of them didn't. And so at the end of the day, I was robbed of my childhood. On top of that, my mother was always gone, and I was basically forced to stay at the house and raise these girls. How? I don't know, but I did. Mind you, we lived in a camp, and camp was literally so far out in the woods at the time. If you didn't have a car, you was trapped in that sucker. You feel me? If you didn't have a bike, you was stuck. You feel me? It was literally a death zone, a death trap to me, right? So we didn't have a car. We had to catch the city bus back then. We didn't have trolleys, we had the city bus. And so if you didn't have no money, you couldn't catch the city bus, right? We had pay phones. We didn't have cell phones. We had to have at least 25 to 35 cents to call off the payphone, right? So we didn't have a house phone because we couldn't afford it because we grew up in poverty. We didn't have no money, according to my mother. And so my mother was too busy chasing party life, chasing dick, I'm going to be honest, and just chasing it, getting away from us. And she would tell us all the time that I just wish I could just pack up and get away and go on vacation. I wish I could just leave and just run away. She would just say that randomly, and I just didn't understand why. But then as the older I got and I became a mother, I get it. And being 19 with 4 girls, anybody would want to run away, right? So I can't really blame her now. But back then, I ain't gonna lie, I hated her. I fucking hated her. Because I used to ask all the time, why me? Why am I forced to keep your kids? Why I got to sit in the house? I can't go outside and play. I can't skate. I can't have nothing to myself. I can't have fun. I can't laugh. I can't do shit. So I would go to school mean and angry. And people would say to me all the time, why you so mean? You so grown. I would hear from the family all the time. She so grown. She too grown. And nobody ever stopped to ask why. Nobody ever gave a damn enough to figure out why. I was robbed of my childhood. I couldn't be a child. I had to go to school and get good grades. If I did good grades, I got my ass whooped. Then when I got home, I had to help raise my sisters, help them with their homework. And if I didn't do right by doing that, I got a whipping for that. Whatever they did wrong, I got a whipping for that. Then on top of that, they father family, I would go over there to his family house because she would force me to go over there to keep an eye on my sisters, and I would get mistreated over there by his family. So I was getting mistreated every which way around. And then when I would finally get a chance to go to school, which was Hope at the time, I hated it. I hated my life. On top of that, I belonged to this funky ass church. I gotta wear skirts all the time. So then I'm getting judged by my schoolmates because I wear skirts all the time. Then I'm so mean and grumpy and all of this, and nobody ever even gave a damn. And I can remember a guy that I went to school with that I had dated not too long ago recently had told me, he was like, I ain't gonna lie, when we was in school, I just thought you was mean as hell. I thought you was, you just didn't, like us. And I was like, no, it wasn't that. It was the fact that my life was hard. You know what I'm saying? And on top of that, I got to come to school and deal with hard shit. On top of that, I don't know who my daddy is. On top of that, my mama keep leaving me at home. It's like she finding ways to get away from this house and stay away from this house. So she got with my stepdaddy at the time. And Lord rest his soul, right? She got with my stepdaddy at the time. So she was stuck on him. So now she got 2 jobs. She went and got 2 jobs. I'm thinking she got these 2 jobs so she can come home and take good care of us. She got a job from 7 to 11 in the morning. from 3 to 11 at night to 11 to 7 the next morning. So literally she was never home. She had the neighbor, Miss Lorene, Lord rest her soul, watching us. And Lord, Miss Lorene was nosy as hell. She never missed a beat, baby. I don't know how she seen everything, and she never stepped a foot in our house, but she seen everything and everybody that went in and out that damn door, okay? You know that one nosy neighbor. Lord rest Miss Lorene soul. But at the end of the day, Miss Lorene was the one that watched us, and as well as other nosy neighbors that judged us too. I'm young, now I'm 12 years old. I end up having sex early at 12 years old. Got my virginity broke because at this point, I ain't got no daddy. I don't care nothing about nothing. Heart broke. Might as well. The only valuable thing that I have to give away now is my virginity, my innocence. I might as well, since everybody else, granddaddies and uncles and other people done tried to take it from me against my will, I might as well give it to somebody I choose to give it to. So I gave it to this little scrub in the camp. I don't even want to say his name because Lord child. Stay focused. But at the end of the day, I gave it to this little jackass, and he didn't treat me well. He didn't appreciate it. Broke my heart. So my first heartbreak happened in the camp. So I've been abandoned in the camp through the womb. I've been abandoned physically through fathers and mother. Then I turned around, then my heart broke. Okay? So then my mom starts staying at home, right? She started staying at home, but this time she still really don't know how to raise us well because, let's be real, she didn't want to be there. And she didn't really have a bond with us for real, for real. Plus, the church, you know, played a major part in all of that because they kept crucifying us, you know, because we was getting abandoned by the family in the church too, because the church would divide our family a lot. And it was basically, if you weren't willing to be a part of this church, then you basically was of the world, right? You were crucified. You was, you know, pushed aside. You was considered a backslider. So I would basically be back and forth between my mom and my grandmother's house. It's like my mama's house was the center house, and my grandmama's house was the Christian house. So I would, at my mama's house, I would have to babysit my sisters, but I would get to be my sinning self at my mama's house, right? But then when I get tired of babysitting and taking care of the kids and being too grown, and I just say, fuck it, I want to be a kid again, I would just go back to my grandmother's house. So I would move back and forth between my grandmama and my mama's house. So I got to my grandmama's house, but at my grandmama's house, you got to be strict in church, you got to wear dresses, you got to abide by rules, you got to respect, you got to wash your ass, you got to do a lot of stuff, right? And so my grandmama taught me values and morals, even though it was very strict and stiff at her house. So I got to my grandmama's house, and I'm in church, you know, and I would love to go to church with my grandmama because I get to be prissy, I get to be a kid, I get to be a girl, and I get to see my other grandmother. But then when my daddy Billy died, that's when all the truth started coming out. So I'm just like, okay, God, who's my father? And so that's when, you know, the Social Security part come up, because of course, you know, when people pass away, SSI and all that stuff come up. So now everybody's saying, oh, well, hey, you know, we can't get no SSI for you because, you know, he had 3 girls, but we can't get SSI for you. Mind you, I'm the oldest Billy child, and I'm oldest of Mike's children. But I can't get no SSI from Billy because he's not on my birth certificate and they can't prove he's my dad. This is what I was told as a child. I didn't care. I was just like, forget it. It is what it is. I grew up without a father figure. And later in my life, when I hit about in my 20s, in my 20s, I was working my job at Buffalo Wild Wings, and Mike showed up to my job, and at this point, I got to see that he was, in fact, strung out on drugs, unfortunately. And Lord rest his soul, right? So he showed up to my job. I'm like 21, 22. I done had my only baby, and I got my first crib. And Mike come to the, you know, they come to the job, and he like, hey, I'm back. I'm in your life. You know, I'm here. You know, and I was just like excited to actually have him back because I missed him. And I ain't gonna lie, I felt like it was my fault that he went and got strung out on drugs because I told him he wasn't my dad. Even though he had several other kids after me that really were his biological children. But I dealt with a lot of hate and scrutiny from his own kids because his baby mama and her kids were groomed to, oh, that ain't his child, and this and this and that. And mind you, all of them grew up in the camp. All these folks, his baby mama, Billy, Mike, my grandmothers, everybody grew up in this neighborhood. So I basically was like divided. I was like a house divided. I'm Billy child or I'm Mike's child. No, that ain't Billy child. No, that ain't Mike child. Yes, it's Billy child. Yes, it's Mike child. I was literally split in half at birth. So now I got Mike in my life, at least I think. He come around for a little while and he disappear again. I don't see him again for some more years until I hit about 30. And then I get a call from one of his family members saying, hey, y'all gotta go to court tomorrow. And I say, court for what? And she says, well, the court's saying that he owed $22,000 in child support for you. And I say to myself, how is it that I'm 30 years old and I got to go to court for child support? And I didn't even know that we even was in court. And she says, well, yeah, your mama and him been going to court for you. And I say, what? Because I'm 30. And mind you, at the time, me and my mom was conversing. She could get in contact with me at the time. She had access to me. And she never even parted her funky lips to tell me that we had to go to court or that she was even going to court for me. So that pissed me off and that broke my heart because I'm like, why would you hold that information back from me? So now I show up to court the next day, surprisingly, with both of them. She show up to court and Mike show up to court. And so now we're in the court system. I'm 30 years old, sitting between both of my parents. Hey, you know, the lawyer come out and say, well, how we going to pay this $22,000 back? And Mike is looking at my mother, and he's like, hey, tell him the truth. And she's sitting over there, her Christian self, because at the time she had joined this church because this church was just, And so she had joined this church, the same church that had divided our family our whole life. She joined this church, and now she's so Christianified, she's so holy, she can't part her lips to tell the truth. So now I'm sitting in this courtroom trying to figure out why I'm in the courtroom at 30 years old with my daddy, who is, I guess, not my dad or my dad. I don't fucking know because we never had a DNA test, and looks don't mean nothing. I can look like this guy, but this guy could be my father. Who is my daddy? But at the same time, Mike just like tell him the truth. And she sit there, lip zipped, and she wouldn't say a word. And I'm just like, okay. So they end up kind of almost bickering in the courtroom, in the hallway. We never made it in the courtroom. And he like, tell him the truth, tell him the truth. And she wouldn't say anything. And so I guess she decided she was just going to take it to her grave. And so they ended up putting us out the courthouse. So we never made it in the courtroom to find out what the truth was. So I came home with still many question marks. About a year went by, because I'm highly intuitive. I heard in my spirit one day, I meditated, and I heard, go find your daddy. Go to the camp and find your daddy. And I said, go to the camp? I was like, how am I going to go out here and find him? I don't know where he is. Then, and no offense to my daddy, but he a crackhead. How you going to find a crackhead and you don't know where he stay? Okay. But neither here nor there, I still trusted God, and I went anyway. So I jumped on in my little dune buggy, and I pulled out in the camp in the neighborhood I hadn't been in years, because I had vowed to myself that I would never go back to this death trap, because plenty of days we got stuck out there. We didn't have a car. We had to catch the bus, and if you missed the bus, you was just stuck. And try to walk if you want to. Baby, it'll be nighttime by the time you get to the end of the road. So at the end of the day, I vowed to myself when I got older that I wouldn't go back there unless I needed to. But God sent me back. And I didn't realize how much I had roots there until now, as I'm speaking to y'all about it. So I got there, and I'm looking for my dad, and he was down, and, I couldn't find him. And I'm like, God, where is he? Where is he? And I pull into the dead end to turn my car around, and there go my dad right there in the yard messing with the flowers. I throw my car in park, and I jump out, and I just run to him with legs flying and hair flying in the air like a little bitty girl, like my 12-year-old self, looking for my dad. And I run to him with open arms. I'm like, Dad. And he welcomed me with open arms, and he like, hey, my baby. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And I just immediately break down, and I start crying, apologizing to him about what happened in the courtroom a year prior, because I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what my mama had not said. I didn't know what truth wasn't spoken. I just didn't know. So I felt like it was my responsibility again to apologize to this man. Same way I felt like it was my responsibility to tell him he wasn't my biological father was the same way I felt like I need to apologize on her behalf, because she wasn't bold enough to do it. And I was just in his arms, and I was just crying, and I was just like, Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for what you had to go through. I'm just sorry. And he was like, don't worry about it. You still mine. I don't care what nobody say. You mine. And I'm like, but what was it that she wouldn't speak up about? And he said, don't worry about it. We handled that. We fixed it. Don't worry about it. So I'm like, well, what about the court situation? He said, don't worry about it. You mine. That's all that matters. Come on. You got your family that's ready to meet you. Everybody been ready to see you. Come on. So I'm like, all right. I started back coming around, and at the time they had which they still throw these reunions, these project reunions, and I didn't know nothing about the camp reunion at the time. But he was like, yeah, come on, we throwing the Chris in these reunions. And come on out here because your family ready to see you. They ready to meet you. Come on. So we get out there. And I noticed that half of the family was welcoming and half of the family wasn't. I could see the eyes and I could hear the spirits. She ain't ours. Why is she here? So here I am again in my adulthood, in my 30s, early 30s, being crucified again by the same neighborhood that I grew up in. But he was going out of his way to protect me because he knew that these people were vultures. He knew that some of them liked me and some of them didn't. Some of them was envious and some of them whatever, right? But he didn't give a damn. He just kept telling them, she mine. I don't care what y'all say. She the oldest of my children. She mine. Some of them was like, that's Billy Child. I could hear the chatters when I was walking by. At this reunion, I could hear people saying shit. You had some that was coming up, wrapping their arms around me. Hey, cuz, what up, family? We missed you. We ain't seen you since you was a kid. And then you had others that were sitting back looking at me like, she don't belong to us. But I stayed strong because I was there with my dad. Even though in the back of my mind I'm saying, God, is he my dad? I don't know. But he my dad. So he going out his way to protect me because he knew that these people wanted my ass finito. Done. He knew it. Especially his children. All of his kids. And it's crazy because before he brought me to this reunion, me and his children lived in another project neighborhood together. They claimed me as their sister. All until he got back in my life. And when he got back in my life, now I don't belong to them. They don't want to claim me. So now I got to deal with my siblings on this side. Don't want nothing to do with me. On top of that, Billy's children don't really like me because Billy had 2 kids. And I'm the oldest on that side. They don't really like me. I'm the oldest of my mother's children. They love me, but they don't like me either. Because why? I'm different. I didn't understand it at the time until I got older, but I understand it now. So now Mike saying, well, hey, come on around. We having family gathering. We having barbecues. Come on, your family wants you there. He invites me to the family's house. I get to the family's house, and again, I still feel the division. But I have the cousins who pretended to welcome me in for a little while. I started hanging around them, right? But then shortly after, I'm thinking, okay, I got my family, I got my daddy Mike, we reunited, forget everything that happened in the past. We just gonna start fresh. Shortly after that, Daddy Mike gets stabbed in the heart by his own nephew. So now he laying up in the hospital in a coma for at least 2 to 3 weeks. Unresponsive. Now, mind you, nobody wanted to call me when he got stabbed. But it took one of my aunts to call me and let me know that he had got stabbed. She said, well, nobody wanted to call and tell you. I said, why? So I get to the hospital to visit him, and you would think that everybody would be sad at the fact that he just went through this tragedy. And on top of that, it was still through the family, because you got daddy and nephew involved in this situation. But instead, when I got to the hospital, my so-called sisters were too busy walking down the aisle. It was like walking the green mile, that 8 mile. You know how you walk that long trail, right? In the hospital. And I'm coming up to them, and you would think that I could embrace them and they would embrace me. But no, they were too busy still looking at me like, bitch, what you doing here? And I knew then I could feel the sharp daggers coming from them, because, of course, I could feel spiritually. I'm an empath, so I could feel. But they didn't know it. So I could hear the chatter still. Why is she here? Why is she here? So then I get to the weight room. You got the weight room filled up with the Barnes family. I mean, the Barnes family is huge. So I get to the weight room, and you got 2 or 3 of them that knows me, that's welcoming me, and you got majority of the weight room that's not welcoming me, and the other ones don't even know me. And I can still hear the chatter. And then I hear somebody say, well, they told us don't let her go back there and see him. So y'all ain't worried about it, the fact that my dad is laying up in here in this hospital bed, stabbed by his own nephew. Y'all too busy worried about the fact of me, whether I'm his child or not, and whether I get to come back to see him, to the back and see him or not. But by the grace of God, God still allowed me to get back there and visit my dad. So 2 weeks later, they end up pulling the plug on it. And so now here I am again, fatherless, right? Mind you, before they even pulled the plug on him, you got my grandfather, my mother's dad, was in the hospital as well, dealing with diabetes. So you got my daddy Mike on the deathbed, in a coma. You got my grandfather, who was my confidant, my go-to, the person who saw me on his deathbed. At the same time. So I would leave one floor to go to the next floor to visit my granddaddy. At the same time, my sister was having my nephew. So you got my daddy dying, my granddaddy dying, and my sister is about to go in labor. I don't know whether to be heartbroken or whether to cry. I just don't know whether to be happy. I just didn't know. My emotions was all over the place. But nobody gave a fuck because everybody was too busy worried about I wasn't Mike's child. Mind you, it is what it is. They pulled the plug on Mike. I still try to hold on to his family a little bit just because that was the closest thing that I had to him. But didn't know that they was going to try to crucify me later after he passed. Mind you, all these people grew up in the camp from Hope. I grew up in the camp. I grew up in Hope. I grew up in Alberta City. And all of these are from the east side of town. So, when I found out when Mike passed that, well, actually before Mike even passed, I found out that throughout my life, when we stayed in Alberta City, which wasn't far from the camp, we moved to Alberta after we left the camp in 2000. And I found out that I had Mike's family around me at the time I was a kid, and I didn't know it. So it was as if he had placed his family around me to keep an eye out on me. So he was always able to find out about me throughout my life, even though he wasn't around physically. He had people around to kind of report back and let them know I was okay. So when I got to the family gatherings, I started seeing some of these family members that I used to see as a kid. And I'm like, hey, I know you. I remember you. And they like, yeah. And they were giving me these looks like, you know, throughout my life, like, you know, we knew something about you, but they never spoke up. So I asked one of the cousins, like, why you never told me? Why you never told me? And she just was like, your mama asked me not to. So that broke my heart again because I'm like, why the fuck has she went out of her way to keep these secrets from me? Right? What? Why would she do that? She's hanging around Mike's family, like friends, partying, drinking, doing all this stuff with these people, and I'm not even knowing these are his family members, knowing that I want to see this man because I done lost Billy at this point. Billy done died when I was 12. Now we done moved to Alberta. I'm asking like about Mike. I'm praying and asking God for him. You know how you a little kid and you just wish upon the star. And I'm just like, God, I wish that I could see my dad and Mike again. And not knowing that his family was placed around me strategically, watching me throughout my life as I was growing up. They knew who I was, but I didn't know who they were. And because she had orchestrated them not to tell me, which I still don't know why they did it. So now here I am in his death, coming around the family, all these secrets swirling around me, and I'm still being judged. I'm still being crucified. So, of course, I'm pretty sure Mike has SSI or Social Security or whatever because he was a working man, too. Both of these men worked real hard throughout their life. But, of course, I didn't get shit from Mike either. And I don't know if he left me anything or not, but the family was so cruel and crooked and money hungry, I wouldn't be surprised if they did get some money and they basically falsified some documents so I couldn't get any because he wasn't on my birth certificate. So, at the end of the day, I finally got fed up and I was just like, all right, I done walked away from my mother's family, the People's family, the Sturkeys. I've walked away from the Clarks. I've walked away now, at this point, from the Barnes family. Now I'm literally solo dolo, walking around by myself. All of my painful memories reside in the camp. So whenever people bring it up, it's like an eyesore to me. It's like a dagger in my heart. It just takes me back to poverty. It takes me back to the time that I had to run away from home. Because when a child run away, that says a lot, especially a black child. I can remember running away from home. It was the first place I ever ran away from home in. I remember us always being stuck out there, never having a car, never having money. I can remember my mama being out there, but not being there with me. She wasn't there. She was there physically, but she wasn't there energetically, present, like in her energy. She wasn't there. I watched my mother get jumped on by a lot of people out there. I watched my mother and my grandmother and my aunts share men out there. That's where the story of promiscuity comes from. I watched a lot of things that I shouldn't have seen out there in the camp. I seen a lot of crackheads and alcoholics, and I seen a lot. I bought my first cigarette out there, but it wasn't for me, it was for my mother. Could you imagine being 12 years old? We had this candy man, Mr. Dave Anthony, used to come through on this van, and he was like a candy man in a van. And he would come and ride in that van, and we would love to hear that candy man van every night coming down the street. And he would basically allow people to credit, because of course we was living in the project, so we were so poor that everybody credited everything out there. And so my mother would send me to the van every night or every other night, and she would like, go credit me some cigarettes from Mr. Dave. You know, back when we had paper food stamps. So we didn't have no money, so we had paper food stamps. We didn't have nothing, we had food stamps. And so I would go to Mr. Dave and I would ask him to buy a cigarette, and Lord rest his soul, Mr. Dave would let me get the cigarette. And some days he wouldn't let us get it because my mama's tab was so high, we couldn't even afford he wouldn't even let her get the tab, get the cigarettes, that she would cuss me out when I would come back home. So I would get cussed out for not taking care of the kids if I didn't do it right. I would get cussed out for everything, or whooped for things that I didn't do. And then on top of that, even if I couldn't get her a cigarette. So I saw my mother, you know, have miscarriage out there. I saw her hang with people that didn't give a damn about her. I saw a lot in that neighborhood. So when people say, oh, you from the camp and they want me to rep it, I be sitting back like, I don't even want nobody even know I'm from there. I don't want to claim Hope at all. I don't want to claim the camp. I don't want to claim Hope. I don't even want to claim Alberta. But you can't erase your history. No matter how much they try to take it out of the books. Just like I tried to take my history, my story, out of the book. It still remains, right? The facts still remain. So when I go back to the camp, now that I'm an adult, I have a vehicle, I can go back now. I don't have to worry about getting stuck. Because people couldn't even catch a ride out there. People didn't even want to go to the camp. Going to the camp was like going out of town. It was considered going out of town. If you lived in the camp, we ain't going out there. It was like catching the first train smoke. I don't know if y'all seen the episode SpongeBob when they got stuck in Glove World. Him and Patrick got stuck in Glove World. It was like being stuck in Glove World. It was like you would miss the bus and you were stuck for days, for ages. And you better be out there to catch that, so if you don't, you're lost. Ain't no telling how long it's coming back. Right? So if people did come out there, majority of the time their cars was raggedy. So if their cars broke down on the way there, they ran out of gas or anything. So a lot of people hated to come out there. So I had registered it in my mind that coming out there was like going out of town. I ain't going out there. And so when I got older, now that I have a car, I have access to go, I still didn't want to go because it was taking me back to my childhood when I would get stuck out there. Right? I didn't realize how badly this place had scarred me until today. Like, I knew it scarred me, but it scarred me, right? So I got a couple of friends that live out there. They still got family members that live out there right now. To this day, they won't leave because some people just, love out there. Some people, that's where they grew up at, that's where they were born and raised, and that's where they plan on residing until the day they die. And ain't nothing wrong with that if that's what they want to do, right? And so, even when my dad and Mike passed away, I would still go out there and visit with my other cousins before I stopped hanging around them. I would go around with them and, go out there and hang out and party with my cousin and them at their house and shit. But even then, when I would go out there, it would remind me of this place. And I would sit outside and I would just revisit. It's like a replay. I could see me as a kid running away. I could see me as a kid out here trying to tend to my little siblings. I could see me as a kid out here wishing and hoping that I had my own bike. Wishing and hoping I had my own skates. Wishing that I could be a girl. Wishing I could be innocent, right? But I didn't never get a chance to. And so that kind of made me want to stay away too. And then when my daddy got stabbed out there, in his heart, right? By his own fucking nephew, who was fresh out of prison, right? Then they turned around, his own sisters, who could have helped saved him, according to his other sister. She said they could have saved my dad. The nurses in his family could have saved him. But instead, they came and they watched him bleed out on the sidewalk in the camp. So he died in the camp. So now when I come out here, y'all want me to party and hang out here in the same place where my daddy grew up, was born and raised, and died and got killed in. And expect me to be okay. Nobody gives a fuck. Nobody asks how you doing, how you feeling. Everybody's worried about their selfish self, tooting their nose up with booger sugar. Nobody give a fuck. Getting drunk with Budweisers every day, all day. Alcohol everywhere. Partying everywhere. Forget the fact that this is a heartbroken little girl. We don't give a damn about her. She don't belong to us in no way. Right? But I'm supposed to just plaster a smile on my face and keep pretending to be okay. All I kept hearing throughout my life was, shh. They didn't know no better. But I'm supposed to know better? What about the people who actually had me? Because I didn't ask these people to go and fondle each other and create me. But I'm the one that got to deal with the backlash of it. I'm the one that got to keep catching the short end of the stick. And the short end keeps happening out here in the camp. So then I get older. I become my spiritual self. I'm a seer, so now I can see things. I get out here to visit a friend of mine, and I notice why this place was a dead zone. All the people, the guys that I grew up with in my childhood are, let's be real, fucked out, right? Drugged out, zombied out. So I'm like, this is why I stayed away from here. Because everybody done had everybody. Everybody that screwed, everybody out here broke, everybody out here scamming, everybody flim-flam, everybody out here going off that shit. Everybody just gone. But then when I come out here, I keep getting crucified and I didn't know why. I see why now. I see why now. I saw everything and everybody too clearly and they didn't want that. I later found out that this neighborhood was built on top of an old graveyard. Yes, I said it out loud. Crescent East, Woodmont, used to originally be a graveyard. And if you don't believe me, go out there because some of the graves are starting to sink in now where you can see it in the grass. Yeah, preferably close to the back there by the office. That's why so much wickedness go on out there. It's literally its own dark land, right? And so, at the end of the day, it takes me back to what my cousin said today when he said, look at it as you a beautiful rose that grew through the concrete. And then all I can hear God say is, look how far you come. And y'all, I laid across that bed and I just wept like a baby. I cried so hard because I didn't know that I was still harboring all of that. God had been saying, let go of the grudges. And I'm like, God, I've been doing the shadow work. I've been letting go of the grudges. I've been doing the work. I've been trying to face my demons. I've been healing it. I've been speaking my truth. What is it that I'm still holding on to? But if it wasn't for my little chocolate smiling ass cousin, Jamal, tagging me in that post today about the camp, I would not be here speaking this truth right now. As uncomfortable as it is to hear, for the people in the camp probably, for my relatives, my family members, it is just as uncomfortable for me to speak. But I gotta free my fucking soul because I am tired of carrying these burdens. I am tired. It has never been my cross to bear. I did not ask to be conceived. I never asked to be abandoned or crucified by these people. I never asked for this lifestyle. At least I thought I did it anyway. But you know they say in the spirit world, you do choose your life. You choose your family. And they say that I chose this life to come and break the curses in this bloodline, in these bloodlines. Because it wasn't just one bloodline. It wasn't just my mother's bloodline. But I had to break curses in 3 families. Right? Whether they liked it or not. Whether they accept me or not. Whether they trust and believe in me or not. It was my duty to come and do what I came to do. Which was be me. And so, I thank God for my cousin and that message today. So, moral of the story is, to y'all, go back to your roots. Face your roots, face those shadows, because if you don't, they'll forever chase you. No matter how far I try to get away from the camp always find me. No matter how much I try to ignore I was from there, it always finds me. And I always preach that word, that you can run, but you can't hide. So you need to face it. You can move across seas if you want to. You can get on as many drugs as you want to. You can cope with as many mechanisms as you want to. You can party as much as you want to. You can work as much as you want to. But at the end of the day, when you sit down, you still got to face them demons. You still have to face that shadow. And so today was my day to do that release. And today was my day to speak this truth. Because those family members, no matter how far I try to get away from all of them, because I'm going to be honest with you, just like they wanted nothing to do with me, I don't want nothing to do with now one of them now till this day. Why? Because who wants to be somewhere you're not accepted or loved? Not me. I spent my life trying to be accepted and approved by all 3 families. The Sturkey, the Peoples, the Clarks, the Barnes. The Sturkey and the Peoples are the same family. I spent my day trying to be accepted and approved and included by these people. I literally tried to force myself to fit where I was never going to belong. It explains why every time I tried to go back out there, I was crucified. Now that I've gotten older and I came to my senses, I've abandoned all 3 families the same way they abandoned me. But they all still watch me secretly through fake accounts and they think I don't know. So I hope they get this message. I've been spiritually attacked by these families because they didn't want me to get up here and speak this truth. Because they know that if I spoke this truth will reveal and expose them in their true darkness. I have been spiritually attacked my entire life. I can remember having a dream at 7 years old that my mother's mother took me to the edge of a cliff like the Grand Canyon and pushed me off of it. And then I had a realization probably about 3 years ago, when I did an ancestry reading on myself. It came to me that if my grandmother wanted to abandon me, it also gave me a realization that why my other grandmother wanted nothing to do with me. These people were embarrassed of me. I was a fucking disgrace to their bloodlines, to their reputations, to their church life, to their neighborhood. Because they all cared too much of what people thought, especially people in the camp. And I was the one that caught the daggers of it all. So I grew up hating this place. And I found myself starting to hate the families, which is why I had to separate myself from these people. Because the love that they were so-called giving me was never real. It was always fake love. And I got tired of fake love, and I decided to go off and create real love within myself, fall deeply in love with myself, and go where I feel most alive, even if that meant being by myself. And the only places I ever felt alive was in nature. By myself. Still to this day. And now people wonder why they can't get me to come to parties and family gatherings and barbecues. Because why would I? Because I'm only going to be still crucified and talked about and looked down upon and nose turned up against because of what people are not talking about. Because I'm Billy Child. Or that's Mike Child. Or no, they ain't Billy Child. No, that ain't Mike Child. Why she got the gifts? Why we didn't get them? Why her? Why? But nobody ever thought that if they had gotten a simple DNA test, how they could have killed all of that unnecessary drama. These people had so much money that ran through their fingers. And I grew up with shoes flopping off of my feet. I grew up having to share clothes with my siblings. I didn't get a chance to have a bike by myself. I didn't get a chance to have skates. I had to share everything that we did. If we got anything, it was secondhand or bought from given to us by somebody else. It was already broke down and tattered and torn. And by the time we got it, my sister and them took it down through there. I never got a chance. So y'all wonder why I'm in my 30s and I'm a big kid. Y'all wonder why I like to play with bubbles and go to the park and skate and ride. If I even got a bike in there now. I hadn't even rode it yet, but I'm going to start soon. My granddaddy asked me, the same granddaddy who came into my life, because him and my grandmother divorced. When I was 12 or 13, right before we moved from the camp, my grandmother divorced my granddad, who was considered one of the father figures, right? The church had crucified him because they was trying to say he had messed with my mother. But I didn't know that until I got older. But when my grandmother, the church convinced my grandmother to divorce her husband of 18 years. So my granddad had disappeared, and I didn't know why, and I kept asking God why. Where my granddad at? Where my granddad at? So then I get older, in my 30s, about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, granddad popped back up. Granddad got a lot of answers to the questions that I had. Me and granddad started spending time, and he started telling me things that nobody else would have told me. It was almost as if he had the truth and they ran him away on purpose because they knew he was going to speak it to me. So he told me the truth from his side. My granddaddy came around and he said, well, what do you want for your birthday? I said, I want a bike. My granddad went and bought me a bike. Yeah, I said, granddad, I want me a teal green bike. But I wanted a bus bike. But he went and got me a mountain bike. I'm grateful for that. So at the end of the day, he began to reveal the truth, a lot of truth when it came down to him, my grandmother. He exposed to me how my grandmother never really truly liked my mother, which explained why my mother always spent her days trying to get approved and accepted by her own mother. Right? She was always crucified because you got to think about it. She was young, getting pregnant with me. So my grandmama probably never truly forgave her for that. But my grandmother loved me, even though she was heartbroken because she didn't have her mother. She was abandoned. So my grandmother knew that her daughter was too young to take care of a child alone. So she did step up to the plate and help raise me. She did. And I'll never take that from my grandmother because I got a lot of my values and my morals from her. I'm a lot like my grandmother. I'm a lot like my other grandmother. I'm a lot like my great-grandmother, the Lord rest her soul, Julie. As much as I try to get away from these people, the more they try to get away from me, it's like every time I look in the mirror, I see them. And whenever they see me, they see the truth. So at the end of the day, they can try to run from this truth, but it still had to come up regardless. I'll be 40 this year. And I'm just now speaking this truth. And so, you got a lot of my family members who still in this so-called church, this cult, pretending that all these lies ain't swirling around our family. And then you got my other side of my family who are part of the world. They come deep from down in the sticks. Witchcraft, right? So I come from a family of evangelists, preachers, and also, what you want to call it? Basically, they are empaths, but at the same time, they chose to misuse their gifts, so they started working with dark arts. So now we got a bunch of warlocks swirling around in the family. So I had to cut my family off in order to go and become me and be myself, because I was never going to ever be able to be free. I feel like Cinderella just been in a basement all my damn life, hidden. And as long as I remained hidden, people could juice me for my power. They was okay with keeping me hidden. They knew how powerful I was. They knew that I was a seer. They knew I was gifted. They knew I was spiritual, but I didn't know it. So a lot of these people kept me hidden, kept me under a rock, but then they would come and touch me and get powered up off of me. But then they would shun me when they would get juiced up off of me. It's like siphoning. So I've been siphoned by all three families, right? I didn't ask for this shit. All three families are very spiritual, highly gifted. Not just my mother's side, both of my father's side as well. So that's why I'm this speaker to this day. I've been crucified by a lot of my peers, calling me a false prophet, but don't know that I come from a prophet background. My roots is impacting. I can't fake this shit if I want to. It runs through my fucking blood. So for those who have called me a false and a fake, fuck you too. But it wasn't meant for you to realize that at that moment. It was meant for you to crucify me. It was meant for you to shun me. It was meant for me to be pushed off of your cliffs and disrespected and put on your crosses and crucified and nailed. It was meant for y'all to leave me for dead, because it exposed your true character. Yes. Yes. Thank y'all. So if you wanted to know why I'm so to myself and I'm so mysterious and so quiet, that's why. Because of my dark roots that I came up with. And I chose to be of the light. But people look at me and they think, oh, well, she must do witchcraft. No, baby, I'm a prayer warrior. Oh, she must be a preacher. No, I'm just me. I'm just a speaker. I don't even like to consider myself a preacher. I don't like to even put evangelist or a bishop or what y'all call them, apostles, all those big title names on shit. I'm just Seven. I asked God who I was to him. And God said, you're Seven. And people said, well, why she got, who she thinks she is? She must be Muslim. She changed her name. I changed my name because who wants to keep being called Nunu or LaKendra or being a Peoples, a Clark, a Sturkey, or a Barnes, but nobody wants you. So I changed my title to Seven Kindred. Well, God did. I didn't do this just because I wanted to do something. I did this to be set apart. And I didn't know that later I would find out what 7 meant. 7 meant completion. And this is why a lot of them tried to get rid of me at birth. And even throughout my life, tried to get rid of me secretly, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. Because a lot of them might not have physically harmed me. They tried to abuse me energetically. A lot of them prayed against me, and I didn't know it. They left me abandoned because they wanted my heart broken. Because guess what? People can die from a broken heart. And there was plenty of days that I wanted to. There's plenty of days I wished I had. There's plenty of days that I would say, God, what if I never existed? I can remember writing in my journal, what if I just disappeared? Just what if? And my mother found it. And instead of her embracing me, she chastised me. Made me want to off myself even more. Because in my mind, if I just never existed, these people's life would have been way better probably. They would be more happier. And they wouldn't hate me so bad. So you want to know why I grew up the way I did? That's why. That's why I grew up bitter. That's why I grew up unhappy. Mean. Sad. Because I was dying in the inside and nobody cared. And they wanted it because it would have erased the stain on their garment. That they wanted to be so clean. But the whole time was a filthy, tattered, torn garment. Bleached up and faked. That they put starch on and put perfume on. And they went to church and they pretended and acted like they were holier than thou. And when I decided to walk away from the church, oh, they gave them even more reason to judge me and crucify me, because now I'm learning to accept my African culture, my true backstory, my true roots. I'm now accepting who I truly am. And so now, because I'm not hiding that, because I'm walking around in my dashikis, I wear my gemstones and I work with my copper, I'm tapping into my Egyptian heritage. My spiritual gifts that they tried to hide, that they were embarrassed of. They tried to judge me and make me a witch. Oh, wow. They've been in closets behind closed doors, secretly doing the things they tried to say that I was doing. All because I was living out loud. And they chose to be in private. I'm not the only tarot reader in my family. I'm not the only empath in my family. I am not the only prophet in my family. I'm not the only empath. I'm not the only spiritualist. I'm not. I got family members that practice voodoo right now, which is why it's backfired. When your family begin to kill each other, because not only on my daddy's side has his own nephew taking him out, but then you got on my other side of the family, you got one of my cousins had to take our own brother out due to being touched. And those are demons that swirl around in the family. And because I chose not to keep getting molested or preyed upon by my own family members, the men in my family that I looked up to, oh, shh, child, hush, hush. I later found out that this is something that's just been running through our bloodline, running rampant for years, and everybody's been okay with it. And they've been mad at me because I wasn't. I wasn't okay with being a whore. I wasn't okay with dealing with witchcraft. I wasn't okay with incest. I wasn't okay with keeping it in the family like that. I wasn't okay with lying and pretending. I wasn't okay with heartbreak. I wasn't okay with abandonment. So when I got pregnant at 19, I broke the cycle of early pregnancy. I broke the cycle of raising a child in a healthy way, whether she believes it or not. Because they went out of their way to manipulate my own child away from me. She gone on to the dark side over there, all because of what they put in her ear. And I had to be okay with letting her go so she can go and learn for herself. Because she couldn't just go and hear it through my story. She had to go and learn her own story to build her own reputation and opinion with these people. So I had to walk away from my own seed. The very only biological child I ever conceived. I raised her to the best of my ability and capacity with the tools that I had. I might not have been the best mother to her, but I was way better than the mother that I was raised with. And I'm glad that I'm speaking this truth now, because now I'm able to release the grudges that I held against my own birth mother, because I ain't gonna lie. It was hard not to hate that woman because she kept so many secrets from me and still haven't spoken her truth. And just don't know, the longer you stay quiet, the more you keep these secrets, the harder, the more you harbor, the more you kill yourself in the inside. And you keep yourself stuck and stagnant in life. So I'm speaking my truth for the sake of us all, whether they like it or not. They're going to judge me anyway. I've been judged all my life, so why not go ahead and speak the truth? My stepfather just passed away last month. So now again, if nobody knows what it feels like to lose father figures. If nobody knows what it feels like to lose a mother figure, even though my mother is still alive, it don't feel like it. I wouldn't wish that on nobody. So all of my grief began in the camp. That's why I hated it so bad. But now that I'm speaking this truth, I have no reason to hate it no more, because the truth is out. I have no reason to be subliminal about the messages anymore. The truth is out. I have no reason to run from it and avoid it anymore. The truth is out. I probably will never find out who my biological father is, even though I got siblings on this planet, and I'm pretty sure we can get a DNA test right now, but guess what? Because they don't want to. So that's why I always claim all of my fathers. And I've made peace with the fact that I have multiple dads. But mainly two. So if you like me, don't know who your dad is, you probably feel like you're never going to find out because you had a bitter mother. Because a lot of us grew up thinking that our daddies were deadbeat. And a lot of that wasn't the case. It was the fact that your mammy was bitter. Unfortunately. And I had a bitter mom who was heartbroken as a child, so she never healed it when she became an adult. So what she did was she spent her days bleeding on her children, the men that she attracted, her family members. She bled on us all, and she's still doing it. Unfortunately. So I had to get away from her, because if I didn't, it was going to be either me or her. And I knew it wasn't going to be me, because she had already taken enough from me. She had already robbed me of my childhood. She had already abandoned me in the womb, and physically, spiritually, emotionally, throughout my life. She had already lied to me. She had stolen from me, because I found out that $22,000 was child support and welfare that she had been receiving from Mike. So the whole time this man was paying child support or whatever, and I had no earthly idea. And I can't tell you one time have I ever received $1 of it. But I can tell you that I grew up with shoes flopping off my feet. I can tell you that I grew up buying buddies at the Dollar General. I can tell you that I grew up with nothing. I can tell you I grew up with hand-me-downs. I can tell you that I grew up with zilch. So it forced me to become creative. I had to learn how to make everything that I wanted. If I wanted a certain dress, I had to make it. If I wanted certain shoes, I had to create it. So it forced me to become a creator. I used to be embarrassed that I had to make things, but now the world that we live in, it's actually golden. Now I'd rather go and make something before I go and buy something. And I thank God for that. So he's right. I am a rose that grew through the concrete. And I thank God for that. I thank God that he brought me far from the camp. But I just didn't realize that if I didn't let go of these grudges that I had been secretly holding, pretending to be okay throughout my life, I didn't realize that even though I no longer reside there, I still resided there until today. So when my cousin wrote that, ooh-wee, you talking about breakthrough. Ooh-wee, you talking about crying like a baby. I'm talking about snot running down everywhere. That cry was that ugly cry that I didn't know that 12-year-old girl had never had. And all I could hear after I was done is God say, speak your truth. So, a lot of people may think that I have been mean and harsh with the way that I've handled these families, but not once have anybody stopped and thought how these families handled me. So that's why I say fuck them all. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for the experience, but fuck them. With love, fuck them. They choose to remain the same. They choose to keep being dark. They choose to keep secrets. They choose to keep packing it down. That's why most of the families are alcoholics, drug addicts, promiscuous, dark witches and wizards and warlocks. And they in the church pretending to be holier than me. But wouldn't know God if he slapped their asses in the face. But then they want to crucify somebody like me who ran to God when they tried to push me off the cliff. I had nowhere else to go but to God and me. So if you like myself, and you feel like you by yourself, it's a good thing. It's a great thing, actually. Because, baby, if you don't choose you, and I'm telling what happened to you, I'm not supposed to be sitting here speaking to y'all. Y'all don't know how much warfare and witchcraft that I deal with every time I go live. Every time I think about speaking my truth. Y'all don't know how many times, how many nights I wasn't supposed to make it. I've died 3 times sitting on my couch by myself, but God. And if those warlocks heard that, ooh, Lord, they'd probably be rejoicing because that's what they wanted. Because then it would have buried all of the secrets far, far under that rug that they keep trying to sweep over. But you can't sweep them lies under there no more. We pulling that rug up. It's time to deal with the dirt under it. I ain't carrying that cross of these families anymore. I'm not carrying the crosses that I dealt with in the camp no more. It's not my responsibility. It's never been my burden to carry. I'm now handing it back over to all 3 families. You're welcome. That's the word. That's it right there, y'all. I love y'all real hard. And the ones that truly love me, the real Kindred tribe, because I chose to break away from those family members. And I decided to go and recreate my own bloodline. And that's what I'm doing. So if you have a genuine heart, a genuine spirit, a heart of gold like mine, and you love honesty and straightforwardness, you're not with that pretentious fake shit, you are more than welcome to be a part of the Kindred tribe. Welcome to my family. I'm starting my own bloodline, and yeah, I could do that. God gave me permission to. Just because I was born in those families don't mean I got to stay in those families. They never wanted me. So I'm going to go where I feel most alive. And since I can't find it, I must create it. Just like I've created everything else. So I encourage y'all to get away from those so-called families that you feel like you got to stay stuck to because we blood. Because in this day and age, blood ain't thicker than water, baby. I done met a lot of strangers that treat me way better than people that I was born with. Okay? So with that being said, welcome to the Kendrick tribe. Okay? I love y'all. Hey, Papa Joe. Thank y'all for watching me. He said my shortcake. And that's what he called me. My Papa Joe called me shortcake. That's another one of my nicknames. And I thank God for him. So if you have any men that are willing to step up into your life and play that role, even though they know you are not their children biologically, I commend those men. Because I have been that child that has been mistreated. I've been that child that's been around families that claimed that they were my family and never wanted me around. Because even with my sister and them, daddy, he accepted me, but his family didn't. So whenever I would go around, because I was forced to, the Brown family, that was the other family I had to walk away from. I grew up around them and I got molested. That was the first molestation I ever dealt with in that family by a female. Lord rest her soul. But I dealt with so much mistreatment. They made sure every chance they got to tell me that I wasn't theirs. Like I didn't already fucking know it. So I literally spent my life running, trying to find out where I belonged. And didn't know that I belonged with God. So for those who don't believe, that's on you. But my life and my story speaks for itself. And I don't owe nobody no explanation. I don't owe nobody no explanation but me. I'm no longer seeking nobody's validation and nobody's approval but my own. So if you don't fucking like me, you don't like my walk, and you don't like how I operate, you don't like what I say, you don't like how I dress, you don't like how I speak, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That's a personal problem on your end. Take it up with God. Because, baby, if you could walk a mile in these 7.5 shoes. Hold on, let me show you something. Hold on, y'all. If you can walk a mile in that glass slipper right there, you can talk to me. So that's why I operate the way I operate. That's why I'm zero tolerance to bullshit. That's why I'm not remorseful for speaking my truth. Because if I don't speak my truth, it'll kill me. It almost has a lot of times. And that's what this retrograde was about. Is for us to speak our truth so that we can free ourselves. Because a lot of your family, they're embarrassed because of their background, and they was crucified for speaking their truth. But we're in a day and age now in 2026 where we can. But a lot of us choose to keep silent. And the longer you hush, child, you're going to keep passing it down the bloodline. My nephew told me recently, he said, Auntie, well, before you started speaking your truth, he said, well, nobody's speaking their truth until you know, the people that would never speak their truth are now starting to speak their truth. So in other words, they speaking up now, even though I'm not around to hear it. But that was the point. So he said, T, you've been gone for a long time. When you coming back? You ain't came to the family gatherings. You ain't, because they thought I was joking. They thought I was playing when I walked away because they never took me serious. But when I walked away this last time, at least, 4 years ago, I started walking away when my daddy got stabbed. That's when I finally was just like, I'm done. The Barnes family was the last family that I was holding on to. And then when they turned against me, because they never was for me, Now that I done walked away and chose my own path, and I said, fuck them all, like they said, fuck me. Now I'm being gang stalked by all three families, including the church. And I'm still being gang stalked till this day by all of these families, including that fucking church that we all grew up in. But I'm not going to stop speaking my truth to the day I die. I'm not going to stop. As long as I got breath in my body, I'm going to keep speaking my truth until I free myself. Because I feel like I've been a caged bird. And my wings have just been continuously clipped and clipped and clipped and clipped. Because nobody wanted me to fly. Even my own peers. That's why I don't have friends. Because I can't be amazing around these people. But I can be amazing by myself, though. I could cheer myself on. I won't stab myself in the back. I won't crucify myself. I won't lie to myself no more. I've been lying to myself all my life. I'm okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. And walking around with 10 swords in my back. 3 swords in my heart. You do the math. 13. It's something about that number 13. I thought I was by myself my whole life, but God never left me nor forsake me. I was always surrounded by angels. It was always a safe place for me. And I thank God for that. I hope this message was inspirational. I hope this message helped a lot of people break through their own stories and inspire you to speak your truth. Whether you speak it out loud like me, because I don't expect all of y'all to pick up a phone and be bold enough to go live. I don't expect that. But I do expect you to find a way to get it out of you. Even if it's just you simply picking up a piece of pen and a piece of paper. And writing a letter to yourself, an apology letter to yourself. Because God kept telling me to stop abandoning myself. And I'm like, well, how am I abandoning myself? But I kept abandoning myself because I kept lying to myself that I was okay and I knew I wasn't. I kept plastering a smile on my face and cracking jokes. And that showed me how comedians operate, right? Because I come from funny people in my family. We very goofy, right? And I found myself laughing a lot of my pain off. I found myself entertaining a lot of my pain off instead of me just speaking my truth. And so that's why you got a lot of comedians like Richard Pryor, Mike Epps, and, all these amazing comedians, right, that we used to have back in the day, Martin Lawrence, Def Comedy Jam, all this stuff we used to watch. A lot of those comedians was cracking jokes through their pain because that was their outlet. But you could see the pain in their eyes. And who was it? One of them comedians had a segment called Laugh at My Pain. Was it, what's the short man name? Kevin Hart. Or was it, what's our man? Cat Williams. One of them. But all I know is I found myself joking off a lot of my pain. And a lot of y'all laughed at it thinking, oh, she's so funny, and just didn't know that was my real life. Okay? So, yeah. I want to get back to my silly self, but I don't want to get back to it through pain, through swords. So I'm pulling every sword out of myself, one by one. And I hope this inspires all of y'all to pull your swords out too, because I'm not the only one that had swords in my heart, that had swords in my back. And a lot of them was placed there from my relatives, my bloodline, my family. Yeah. Free yourself, y'all. He says, keep your head up, baby girl. It's going to be okay. Remember that the best person in the world, remember the best person in the world, being the one and only true father, he got you, and you cannot be, he cannot be in any better hands than that. That's true. Thank you for always being there with me. Yeah, Kevin Hart, laugh at my pain. So yeah, I love y'all. Thank y'all, Facebook. Y'all share this live. If you ain't scared, Seven already said it for you. I love y'all. Stay amazing. And most of all, learn to be you.